Shalom. This is Nizama Shel Hamadabar Yasharal again on my channel, Nizama, the Hebrew Mystic Healer. I want to give a quick shout out, as always, to my 3D kin, the 12 tribes of Israel scattered to the 4 corners of the earth. Shalom. I would also like to give a shout out to my cosmic kin scattered over the 12 dimensions of the universal cosmic egg. Shalom to you as well. And in general, just thank you to my viewers and my subscribers for your love and support. I appreciate that. So today I'm going to tackle a controversial topic, and this one will probably be more controversial than Abraham coming out of the Brahmin caste. So I know that one lit a couple fires under people. So I'm just going to start by saying you can disagree with this. There's no expectation for you to agree with this information, but I will ask you to be respectful, and you don't have to feel the need to vent out or lash out. There's no need for that. If you don't agree, it's totally cool. I mean, you don't have to listen to many of my videos if you don't want. You don't have to follow my channel. It's totally cool. You do you, and I do me. That's what I always say. So I just kind of wanted to put that little disclaimer out there. So the title of this video is going to be Annunaki, Ancestor Gods of the Hebrews. And I know this is becoming a more discussed topic among the Hebrew Israelite community, even among the Starseed communities. And I know it's been talked about in the alien conspiracy communities and things of that sort. But my take on it is going to be a little different. I'm going to be looking at it from a strictly Hebraic perspective, but it will have some commonalities with other versions of this story or this belief you might have heard. But I want to start by saying that there is a distinction between the original creator, the one source mind from which we all emanate out of. At some level, we all have different origin points, we all have different soul blueprints, but we all emanated out of there at some point. There's a difference between that source creator, or what the Kabbalah would call the Ion Self, right? There's a difference between that and the Most High and the Elohim of the Bible. And I will explain why. I'm going to get into all of this. So the Elohim in the Bible, and I'm going to leave, because I'm just kind of riffing off of this, guys. I'm not doing like a sit down edited version where I'm adding pictures like I usually do and I have all these references across the screen. I'm not doing that today, so I'm going to add references at the end of the video on the drop down menu if you want to look at some of my references, and you can also do your own research. But as far as I know, I'm one of the few people that's putting this out here right now, so those references are really the best I have to offer as far as information that you can have to correlate this video. But anyway, I digress. So moving on, let's get started. So I have come to the understanding that basically most quote unquote gods are a combination of ancestral deities, and most of them didn't start out as deities. Most of them started out as beings of some sort, people, either from this dimension or another one, that started out as ancestors and had families and bloodlines and cultures that they passed down wisdom and knowledge to, and even national laws. There's that. And then there's also egregores, or created thought forms or archetypes, which have become real in the sense where they become part of the collective consciousness, but they were never really, they didn't exist of their own accord. They were more so created through thought forms of collective consciousnesses, believing them and feeding them through worship. So I wanted to kind of put that out there. First of all, there are those two distinctions. Now, the category that I believe the Anunnaki fall into is the category of the ancestral god, or the ancestor. So I'm going to quickly go off of all the reasons why I found this to be the case. So first of all, I want to explain I do not really follow Zecharia Sitchin's work. I think there's little nuggets of truth in there, but I believe overall He intentionally tried to create an alien-based religion. He intentionally mistranslated a lot of the Sumerian and Akkadian texts in order to support his theories with that purpose in mind. And he's also a 33-degree Mason. So I am not a Sitchin adherer. Just putting that out there too. So my viewpoint is completely different. For example, the actual word Annunaki means those of princely blood or royal blood, not those from heaven who came. Not to say that they didn't descend from higher dimensions initially, but that's not what that word means. The Akkadian word Nibiru, now this gets really interesting, means to cross over. Now, the Akkadians and the Sumerians live right next to each other. They're essentially both ancient Shemitic tribes of people or groups. A lot of people don't know that, but they are Shemitic. They go back to the land of Shem. So I find it interesting that the word Nibiru sounds very similar to Hebrew, and they both mean to cross over. Hebrew or Eber or Iberu or, Nibiru, Iberu, you can see where I'm going with this. So they both mean to cross over. Also, if you look at the ancient Akkadian and Sumerian depictions of their quote-unquote gods that they believed in, right? They actually are wearing fringes around the borders, like a lot of the Hebrew Israelites wear and like is in Torah, and the tassels, and both are in Torah, in Deuteronomy and in Numbers described differently. They have both of those on their garments. They also have beards. So we see those all showing up in Torah. They were patrilineal. They were also, they believed in a kingship, a king priest. They also believed in keeping it in the family, so to speak. They did not believe in genetic mixing whatsoever. In fact, they would exile and punish their own for that, which is what happened during the book of Enoch. So we are called in Psalms chapter 82, gods. All of you are children of the Most High. Also in that chapter, it might be 83, but I'll look it up later just to double check to make sure I'm saying what's correct, and I will add it on to the drop-down menu of the video. But either way, it also says that the Most High sits on the council of gods that he judges over. The word Elohim is plural, meaning powers or gods. That's how they translate God. And they will usually translate God whether it's meant to be taken plural or not. Now, the Hebrew word achad does not mean one like singular like most people think. It means one united. In other words, a united group or a council. Okay? So the Most High sits on the council of gods, but he also declares himself to be the only God. Why? Because he is in charge over that council, not because he is a creator and the rest of them are angels and lower. No, that's not what it is. That's how a lot of biblical scholars have interpreted it, and according to the Christian doctrine and even a lot of the Hebrew Israelite doctrines, but that is not the case. These beings were all the same. They just had different titles. So if we go back into the Anunnaki, looking at the Anunnaki in the Sumerian text, for example, right? There's just a sneaky, suspicious connection there between Enki and Enlil, the two brothers of these Anunnaki, quote-unquote, gods, that basically are fighting over, who should rule. One, Enki is given the title of Lord of Earth, when he eventually gets exiled to be Lord of the Underworld. And he is actually the creator, him and his sister, who is also his wife. And Enlil is the commander or the Most High of the forces. And he is the one that's responsible for enforcing not just what Enki and the other Anunnaki were doing, but he was also the one that was ruling over them and was responsible for the military. Now, according to the Sumerian text, the flood was caused by them, and Enki was the one who rescued, well, technically it would be, in the book of Gilgamesh, it was in Gilgamesh's story, but it's basically a mirror depiction of Noah's Ark. He rescued them because they were from his bloodline. And Enlil allowed it. It was Enlil that wanted to flood the earth. And Enlil allowed it because he said, okay, well, they are our relatives, they're our offspring, they're our children. They are children of the gods. They are distinct from the others, which they considered slaves. So there's this distinction made there right away. So they taught these particular people from their bloodline, they taught them, and it passed on from Noah to Shem, down Shem's line, particularly because we see these texts mostly pop up, in the Sumerian texts? We say them mostly pop up in the Hindu texts, which, Elam, the original Indians were Elamites primarily, they're Shemitic. You see it also pop up in the Bible, okay? Enki and Enlil are both in the Bible, folks. They are both in there. You can see based on how they talk to the Hebrews and the types of quote-unquote teachings are put out there. And after the split between Enki and his brother Enlil, you could see how, and by the way, Enlil's symbol or emblem was the eagle. Enki's symbol or emblem was the snake. Now, isn't that interesting? Because we know in the Garden of Eden, which is definitely an allegory, I think we can agree there, it is an allegory telling a story. However, the original definition was that the snake represented wisdom. So when did the snake go from being wisdom or the healer, which is why even in Exodus, Moses held up the bronze serpent to represent healing or the kundalini or the bloodline, right? When did the serpent go from healing and wisdom to being Satan, to being the deceiver, the tempter? Why is that? When did this vilification take place? Because this was a bloodline feud. This was a war of the gods on earth. And they would all side with these different groups or tribes that they felt a kinship for. And they would war against each other. My God's better than your God. Your God does this. My God does that. That's how all that started. And Enki and Enlil had different, now they were just the two main ones, but there were others as well. And other cultures and stuff they were connected to. I mean, they've had their hands in the cookie jar of history since the beginning, since the time of Atlantis. And you can tell who's who, because Enki does not demand blood sacrifices. Enki actually encourages vegetarianism. Enki created the Kabbalah system. Enki created the Essene way. Enlil was about enforcing the laws of the council. Enlil was about commanding armies. He taught our ancestors how to go to war. He was the one that wanted us to conquer and go to war against the other races because he considered us the closest thing to his bloodline, to the Anunnaki bloodline. Even though technically speaking, they had used their DNA to modify all these people, it was not the same thing as being from their direct lineage. So there was a special care. And they expected us to carry those laws. And that's why when we broke them, our ancestors broke them, and we are our ancestors because reincarnation is real, but our ancestors broke them. And so what happened? The Anunnaki punished us by passing it from our bloodline to the other Shemitic bloodline, the other brother, right? Esau, whose symbol is the eagle, who is a man of war, who has oppressed the 12 tribes of Israel for a very long time, ever since he was given dominion. We were cursed for not following those laws because we were the ones that were supposed to rule. We were the ones that were given that right by the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki were ancestor gods. And if you pay really close attention into, well, particularly the Torah, okay, I'm gonna set the Sumerian text aside for now, set the Vedic text and all that aside for now. You look at the Torah specifically. We did not worship gods. Why is that? We didn't have images. Why is that? Because our gods were our ancestors and they lived among us. We knew them. They walked among us. And you can even hear of like these high dimensional technologies. They're using light Merkabahs to travel. They have this, high science technology that they can nuke, like how Enlil just nuked, Sodom and Gomorrah. And when Enki and Enlil were not against one another, we dealt with all of them. But then when they had that falling out and went to war with each other, then all of a sudden Enki gets villainized as the devil. The serpent all of a sudden becomes this evil, sneaky icon. He had a group of Anunnaki that believed in teaching mankind wisdom, that believed in them having their own sovereignty, being more than slaves, being more than serving the gods, and they're just existing to serve them and feed them energy and do work for them. He believed that they should have their own culture. He believed they should have their own sovereignty. So I'm not saying that Enki is good and Enlil is bad. This is not about polarities of light and dark, good and evil. All of our ancestors make us who we are. Even in our 3D, recent lineage, our ancestors make us who we are. Good or bad. They're part of us. They're in our DNA. They impact us at an intimate level, at a spiritual and emotional, physical level. So, are the gods of the Bible the true gods? No. No, they're not. But are they our ancestors? And by that extension, our ancestral gods? Yes. In that sense, they are. Should they be venerated? Yes. Should they be worshipped and be given sacrifices and have all this energy poured into them? No. And a source mind creator would not expect that. A source mind creator would not beat their chest and say things like, I am the only God and there is no else. Because we're contained within the source creator. We are expressions of the source creator. The source creator simply is. Who's he competing with? That's the way people talk when they have a chip on their shoulder and they're trying to convince everybody else that they are the big man on campus. So I just wanted to point that out. The quote-unquote fallen angels of the book of Enoch were not angels the way we think of angels. They were actually the Anunnaki who rebelled against the council and their laws not to mix their seed with the humans that they modified, that they meddled with in the first place, and not to teach them, because really they didn't want them to have all of that knowledge. They really had no intention of letting them live initially. So that's the truth. Truth isn't always easy to hear. Religions have taken these stories and these books and these historical documents based on oral traditions and experiences and perspectives of these people. And a lot of times this wisdom is hidden in allegories and it's brought out and people just turn it into these religions and these forms and rituals of worship. There's even scriptures in the Bible itself where the Most High of the Council of the Bible says, I didn't ask for sacrifices or offerings, only obedience. I am tired of your sacrifices. I'm full of the fat of your bulls. He said that. They just wanted their chosen people who basically, because it was their chosen bloodline, just like how you would choose or pass down a legacy down to your children, your descendants. If you look even in slavery, when a slave, had a child with a slave master, that that child would usually receive, even if it was somewhat behind the scenes, slightly better treatment than the other slaves. That's how it was then. And they would usually put them over to rule over the other slaves. So the Hebrew Israelites are really just put over to rule over the other slaves and maintain order with the other slaves, to make sure that they were keeping the laws of the Anunnaki while the Anunnaki was on the earth plane, while they were having them do work they wanted them to do. And this was a fringe of sovereignty. And when many of our Anunnaki ancestors tried to correct this, there were repercussions. Now, I'm not saying that this is how the council feels now. I mean, I'm not even saying that the same council still exists. I know that there's prophecies that Esau and his line is going to be punished for what they did to us, because the Anunnaki are extra dimensional beings. They could see ahead in time. They knew what was going to happen. This was a punishment. And Esau, yes, is still part of their bloodline. So they're not going to wipe them out entirely like they would, for example, the Canaanites. But these people are not going to rise up again. They're not going to be able to rule. And they look at them as extending the sentence. Look at what they're doing right now with their dark sorcery to fuel and keep the oppressive chains of bondage in place over Jacob today, even after the 400 years is over. We are them in the sense that we are their descendancy. We are part of that collective in the flesh. Some of us may even be incarnated in these avatars because of the DNA connection, and may even be them, serving out a karmic sentence, working out the karma, healing, trying to fix things, trying to fix what's going on in the earth today and what Esau has done. These are our ancestral gods, folks. That's why we're a special bloodline. That's why we're set apart. That's why we're prophesied to rule. That's why our laws are nearly identical to the laws that were listed in the Sumerian texts. That's why there are stories that are identical to the laws in the Sumerian texts and in the Vedic texts. And we already know that Abraham came from the Brahmin caste. I did a video on that. And where did these Anunnaki come from? They came from Orion and Sirius, those higher dimensional planes of existence, those celestial realms. There are texts that talk about it. What are the pyramids aligned to? Orion's belt. What are and I'm not just talking about the pyramids of Giza. Look at the pyramids in Mexico. Stargates. Portals. Why did later on cultures, because the Egyptians and the Aztecs did not build these buildings. These buildings existed during the time of Atlantis and Lemuria. Why were they there? And why did the later cultures use them as points where they would put the Aztecs and the Mayans would do sacrifices right on the top? Because they knew their gods were right up there. Why did the Egyptians bury their kings under the pyramid? Because they believed the pyramid would direct the soul of the king, who was part god. It was a hybrid, Anunnaki, right? Back up there. Because they put their offspring, their mixed offspring, in high places all over the earth. That's why you see them depicted everywhere in all the ancient depictions. You even see, like I said, light Merkabas, UFOs. You see high science depicted that we don't even have anymore. So I just kind of wanted to point that out. I may do a follow-up video. This video is actually a little longer than I anticipated. I will connect references under the drop-down menu once I post this. And I may do a follow-up video. I may not. But again, you are free to accept this or not accept it. You know, maybe parts of it resonate with you, parts of it doesn't. Either way, I was just putting it out there. If you're unfamiliar with the Sumerian texts or the Sumerian Akkadian culture, I would recommend you researching that. You are going to find a lot of Zecharia Sitchin work, which is all alien theory based. So it's not really going to align as much with the spiritual or extra dimensional component of it. And it is very much going to be about planets and, you know, things like that. It's going to be a little different, but definitely that you can research that. You can see the actual depictions of the clothing that I mentioned when you research as well. I will try to leave links to a couple YouTube videos and some articles that I'd found as well that link it, so you can check that out as well. But either way, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope that it was enlightening to many, at least food for thought, and at least a new, refreshing view. Anyway, I hope you guys are doing well, and Shalom.